Our next presenter is Crystal Cawley. Okay? So, there you go. Okay, Crystal makes sculpture, artist books, and works on and of paper. Her work reflects her interest in reading, sewing, creative reuse, paper, and printing. She has exhibited her work throughout the United States and in England. Her work is in many public collections, Bowdoin College Library, Portland Museum of Art, RISD Library, and the Library of Congress. She was a recipient of the Pollock Krasner Foundation grant in 2005 and Good Idea grants from the Maine Arts Commission in 2004 and 2010. And I've seen some of her work. And there's more on her website. And so keep your programs because there's contact information, websites for all the people presenting today. And her works are remarkable for this kind of fantastic, intimate, imaginative precision. And so I'm really looking forward to her presentation. She's going to share images from an adventure she had last summer at a museum in Wisconsin with the largest collection of woodblock printing stuff. And so Dave Wolf, her husband, I'm sorry? Partner. I'm sorry. Partner. He told us that she is so sincere about her commitment to the earth that after she saw Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth, she gave up her car, sorry, and has walked everywhere around town since then. Actually, you can see her pushing her car. And somebody else said, just to say, she's the most amazing woman ever born. So please, welcome Crystal Cawley.
I thought you weren't going to say that. No pressure there. Last June, I had a week-long residency at the Hamilton Woodtype and Print Museum in Two Rivers, Wisconsin. I got a Good Idea grant from the Maine Arts Commission to do this. Okay, Hamilton has the largest collection of woodtype in the United States, if not the world. They used to produce it. This is one of the old sections of the old factory. Here is some of the woodtype. One of the volunteer positions at the museum is to take the type out of the barrel in the upper left of this picture and sort it out and then put it in a place where it can be used. They reckon they have about 1.5 million pieces of wood type there, everything from about ½ an inch tall to 4 feet tall. It was great being surrounded by all this great old stuff. This is part of the museum with some printed things, old and new, that were produced there, along with a lot of type. Much of the type is not actually usable, and it's in these cases, and you can open it and look at all these gorgeous pieces of wood. Just the environment of the museum is wonderful. In addition to the miles of shelves of wood type, they have these old printing blocks. They're wood blocks that have been carved for posters in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. I'm going to wait for the next image. I'm using my New Jersey voice, and I'm talking really fast. Okay, there on the far left is the Asylum of Hearts poster that woodblock was for, and this is the reception area of the museum. So at this museum, I'm surrounded by all these wonderful images printed by other people from different times in this country, and getting really inspired by that. The first few days I was there, no, the first day I was there, because I was only there for a week, I spent my time just being oriented to what equipment was available, what printing presses I was going to be able to use, and to look at the wood type that I could use and make notes about my favorite fonts and figure out what it was I wanted to use and some of the projects I wanted to use it for. One of the things that I loved about this place is the organization of it. One thing I figured somebody would say when Doug asked them is that I'm an organizational freak weirdo, and I like to keep things in boxes and have everything labeled. So this museum was right up my alley because the way they've organized all of these many small and large pieces of things that into a workable space, and this is one of the shelves. These are large pieces of wood type, and they've written the name of the letter on the end, and then they're stood on shelves like books. And you just pull out what you need, and then the important thing is you put it back where you found it when you're done. So I went there because I made this piece a few years ago. I do have access here to printing presses in wood type, but I'm limited by the size press and the type that we have. But I wanted to go to Hamilton to make bigger pieces of paper with larger patterns on them to bring back here to make into things. So I didn't have the expectation there that I would make these finished prints. I would just have this stack of raw materials. So to just sort of clear my head, I was feeling very overwhelmed by the amount of type that was available, and I just took this set of swash letters and threw them on this press. This press is 40 by 60 inches, which is the largest press I've ever worked on, and it was a blast. And so I threw these letters down and inked them up, and on the left, on this image, you can see the paper that I printed from that. And on the right is a different font that I did a different day, and those red letters were 12-inch tall type. And one of the reasons I loved using this old type is it looks really old. You can now see the wood grain. It's not perfect anymore. It's been used and abused for 50 years. This was a piece I also made before I went there, but I was looking at aprons a lot, and it crossed my mind at some point there that I could try to make an apron picture out of type and out of letter shapes. So I did a large drawing of this particular apron with the bib and the ruffles at the sides and the A-line skirt, and laid that on that large press and started gathering type and trying to compose the picture. This is it in progress. So some of this changed by the time I did the final lockup. I love looking at this type just without ink on it, just as these objects. They're just quite beautiful. There's stains from old ink and everything. So here it is locked up on the press, ready to be inked and printed. When you're working with all these small pieces of type, you have to lock them up. You can't just put them on the press bed and let them stand there and then ink them. They have to be what's called locked up. So what you do is you push them into a corner, and they're locked up with pressure against two sides. And all the little metal things there that you can see are magnets, and so the magnets are gripping the press bed, which is metal, and everything's getting pushed into a corner. This press does not have inking rollers, so I was inking it by hand. In the upper right of this picture, you can see the inking roller I was using. It took about 10 to 15 minutes per print to ink this thing up. And it was great exercise. I don't know how many laps I did around this press before I finally had the whole thing inked and was able to print it. So I have some pictures here of it gradually being inked. It was a light gray ink, and gradually all that beautiful red and blue that was on the type is kind of disappearing. And there's the artist with the first proof. You can see in the proof that some of the areas are light or didn't even show up at all, which is pretty much letterpress 101. When you're working with all these individual pieces of type, you then have to get everything up to the same plane so that the ink takes and so that you get an even print. So you just take little pieces of paper and build it all up. Here's a finished piece. I have 8 of these printed on paper that are finished, and I also printed 7 on fabric that I bought when I was out there because I couldn't bear to just make 8 of them. It took pretty much most of a day to build this thing. The fabric ones I'm going to machine and hand embroider to finish them. So I have this quantifiable stack of stuff that I brought back to my studio, and here it is, some of it's hanging on the wall. And that was a wonderful thing. But the important thing about a residency like that was just being able to be somewhere else and be in this different creative environment and take in different ideas and have time to daydream and have time to make something else. This piece I didn't make with any of the materials that I created at Hamilton, but I couldn't have made it if I hadn't been there. I made it soon afterwards last summer. This is a large-scale sweater. It's called Love Letter Sweater, and it's almost as tall as me. Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. That was great. So, and I think I've already heard this, but there are many people who want to know who does your hair.